Okay, so you want to buy a used tonal and you're wondering how to remove the current one or move it. Well, stay tuned because in this video, we're going to show you exactly how to assess your new location, how to remove the device, and lastly, how to reinstall it. Tonal home gyms are a great piece of equipment, but their lockdown ecosystem requires you to hire a professional installer to remove and reinstall it. They charge around $300 to remove the device and another $300 to install it. This comes with new hardware, professional installers, but they will not transport it for you. They also hide their install instructions from the consumer, but I was able to get a copy and I'll put a link to those in the video description below. Before moving or buying a used tonal, you really need to assess if it has a suitable location at the new place. You need an area of at least 7 feet by 7 feet of floor space and 7 feet of unobstructed wall space. You'll need a ceiling height of at least 7 feet and 10 inches. Next, you'll need to assess what wall is behind it and how you're going to hang it. It can be mounted on concrete with no added material, metal or wood studs. I'll put a link in the description below from the company of their exact requirements, and it's worth looking at. Most people will have drywall with wood studs in their home, and the machine can be mounted on those wood studs behind the wall. These are generally the widths of 16 to 24 inches, and you can use a stud finder and a small magnet to locate your wood studs. Using a pencil or pen, you're going to mark their approximate location, and you can use a magnet to find the exact nails and screws that are holding the studs in place. If you need more help on locating your wood studs or how to drill into concrete, watch some other YouTube videos and then come back to this one. If your studs are non-standard, meaning they're 17 to 24 inches apart, then you'll need to use the wide mount adapters. These should have come with the original tonal, but it's possible the installers took them home with them when they realized they were not needed on the previous install. They're just large pieces of metal that attach to the wall bracket, but Tonal will not sell them to you. You'll need to find someone online that has them and you can purchase from them. I'll put a link to some articles where people are exchanging them with each other. Otherwise, you'll have to open up the wall and add studs to move them closer together. If you use the wide bracket adapters, you may want to purchase these $116 wide bracket adapter covers to make it look cleaner. Once you've determined that you have a good spot for this, you're going to have to remove the old tonal. Let's start off with what tools are needed. You'll need either a 4mm Allen wrench or Allen socket for the button head type screws, or a 10mm hex socket for the hex style bolts. That will depend on what the previous installer used. Next, you'll need a ratchet and an extension and a 7/16 socket if you're going into wood studs, or a 10mm socket if it's coming out of metal or concrete. You'll also need some heavy-duty zip ties, something around 12 inches, and a drop cloth or moving blanket to wrap it up nicely for the long distance moves. You're going to stow the arms in the down position and remove the power cord by pulling it out from the bottom. Then remove any handles or attachments on the machine. Using your extension to gain easy access, remove 12 side bolts using your hex or the 10mm socket, 6 on each side. They are a few inches behind the side of the machine, so you'll definitely want to use the extension. Once all 12 bolts are removed, the item is ready to be lifted off the wall. Get a helper and you're going to lift the machine a few inches up and then out and set it back down on the ground. It's held in place by 2 large cleats. Warning, this machine is heavy, close to 135 pounds, so you certainly want 2 people, if not even 3. Then use your zip ties or shrink wrap tape like I used to secure the 2 arms for transport. Otherwise, they could flop open easily and you don't want that to happen. We were able to lay down a piece of cardboard in the back of an SUV and we just slid the tonal into the car for transport. Once you've carefully transported the tonal, it's time to install it again. So after you've marked up the wall and where it's going to go, stop here because it's a crucial point. The bottom of the tonal bracket needs to be located 27.5 inches above the floor. So if you plan to add a gym flooring mat like you can see here in the video, make sure you do so before you measure from the ground up. Otherwise, you're going to be off a ½ inch to 1 inch, and that will affect where the arms will lay when they're down in the lowest position for a bench press, for example. I was working single-handed, so I opted to use a $40 laser level to help keep me on target, but it's definitely not necessary. A basic level will do the job. Once you determine where your studs are or where you're going to mount it onto concrete, you can lift the bracket 27.5 inches off the floor, and I would err on the high side for this. Hold it firmly against the wall and mark where the drill holes are going to be. I used a 3/16 inch drill bit to make the pilot holes for the tonal lag bolts that are going to go into the wood studs. Note there are 8 lag bolts with washers that need to be installed, yet there are 12 holes on the bracket. So don't do what I did and start drilling 12 holes. You only need to use 8 of them. They probably have extra in case you had an issue with one of those 8 holes. You could always move to the next one down, and that's actually a nice feature. So once you have all the holes drilled out, go ahead and drive the lag bolts in partially. Do not tighten them completely and wait until the end to double check that the bracket's level, and do not over tighten these. The manual says 70 inch-pounds, which is only 5.83 foot-pounds. That's not much. You don't want to strip them inside the wood or the concrete or the metal stud, so go softly here. The entire bracket is similar to a flat screen TV mount, but the machine weighs a lot more, so you just need to be extra careful that each lag bolt is in its rightful place and that you're confident that it's supporting the weight here. Now put the total bench under the bracket and cover it with a towel. With 2 people, you're going to lift it onto that bench. Again, it's heavy, and this is not an easy part of the job. Next, lift the entire machine onto the bracket. It's easy to catch the top cleat, but harder to get the bottom. So if you catch the top one, you could take a moment to relax, take a breath, and then lift a second time, and making sure that the machine is flush with the wall as you lower it down, and it will catch both cleats. Now you need to reinstall the 12 bolts by hand. Do not use a power drill here. By design, these screws are short and easy to strip, so do it by hand and do not over tighten these side bolts. Use a ratchet at the end to firm up the bolts. Then you're going to plug in the power and wrap the cord inside the bottom of the machine, and you're good to go. Other than the weight, it really isn't that hard or difficult to move one of these. It took me about an hour to slowly and carefully install it. And I made a checklist on what steps to follow and the tools needed. If you want to print that out, I'll put that in the video description below. Okay, a few final tips. Make sure your tonal is paid off and the ownership has been transferred to you before buying a used tonal. Otherwise, your machine won't work until you pay it off from the previous person. If you have issues connecting to the Wi-Fi, which I did, it took me about 5 minutes, you'll want to turn off your 5G Wi-Fi antenna and connect it on the 2.4 system first, and then turn the 5G back on. Message me below if you have questions about any of this stuff, and I'm happy to help. Okay, that's it. Enjoy your new tonal home gym.